Hello.
Hello and welcome.
Welcome, everybody, once again, another Friday with Approaching Your Future. And I'll let Donna make the introduction to what we're actually going to be talking about this time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Approaching Your Future with your host, Ana and Victor Ribeiro, where we take steps towards your goals. Today, we'll be discussing the cost of living in the U.S. We have our special guest with us today, Danny Afonso, and she's going to be talking about rentals, buying houses, how it works in the real estate department of the cost of living in the U.S. She's been a realtor since 2005, and she's a certified international property specialist. Danny, would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself?
Sure thing, Donna. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And yes, so I've been a realtor since 2005. Been in Boston for about 24 years. Real estate was not my first career, but I fell into that, and the way I say usually, accidentally. I became a silent partner in a real estate boutique firm. Primarily, my position there was to do the business development and the marketing. And eventually, I got my real estate license, and I enjoyed meeting people and helping them achieve the American dream to buy a house in the United States. I have a few certifications under my belt. I am an auctioneer, a real estate auctioneer as well, which I've done it for 5 years, worked directly with the banks, and specialized in first-time home buyers, and a certified international property specialist because I do work with a lot of international buyers and international renters, people that come here for work or for study, and they will be here transitionally for a period of 4, 5, or 6 years. But that's pretty much the bulk of my experience.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's really good to know that we have someone that's actually experienced in the industry to give us a good perspective of how the market is right now. But just reminding you all that Don and we will bring a little bit of the international student perspective of all the details, like how to rent an apartment, like how it really is to live here, and a few things related to the cost of living states. Isn't that right, Donna?
Completely right. Danny, thank you so much for talking to us. We are so excited to have you here. And I think that the work you do is super interesting and important to us in this live stream because as international students, we really don't have a lot of idea the cost of living in the US can be when we come here. We just assume that the US is this gold mine to live in. And then when you get here, there's a lot of things you need to pay and that you need to be able to afford in order to live here and carry the life that you dreamed of, right? So let's talk a bit about cost of living in the US as international students, first of all. Me and Victor have both been here for a while now. I think Victor has been here a bit more than I have, so he can give us a bit more experience of what it's meant to live here for almost a decade. In my personal opinion, I think that the cost of living in the US is very apparent when you come here. You know, you arrive in the US and you start understanding that there's a lot of things that you need to be able to afford in order to carry your day-to-day life, whether it is transportation, whether it is healthcare, whether it is basic necessities such as food, or even affording your school and paying your school. There's a lot of things to keep in consideration. Well, how was your experience with cost of living and the transition from Brazil to the US, Victor?
Well, first of all, Donna, really good points that you're bringing up there. And when you asked me how was my own experience, so when I first came here, I came as an international student. I was a high school student, and I wasn't necessarily exposed to the normal ways of like renting a house or even. I mean, I was just a high school student, so I never really thought I would ever buy a house or rent an apartment here. But as I progressed to college, I was actually the first time that I rented my own apartment. And there were a lot of things that were really interesting about the process of renting my own apartment that gave me a lot of insights on how the real estate industry actually works here in the United States and how the cost of living here is not only resumed to rent. There are a lot other things that will always be added to it, like there are different terms too that are used by not only real estate brokers, but also tenants and landlords. So those things are really interesting, and those were things that I really had to learn in order to communicate effectively and make sure everything was, in the right place when I was renting my first apartment ever here.
That is very interesting, B, because that is completely true. Like in my own experience, when I came here, I had to deal for the first time in my life with like renting apartments and talking to realtors and talking to brokers and understanding the language and what is and isn't, what they show and don't show. And for me, it was very interesting to see that you had to basically learn it and research on your own. There's a lot of stuff that that is not inherent and it's not set in paper, and like you need to, if you want something or need something, you need to be able to ask for it. And when you're doing your research of what you want in a house or in an apartment, you need to make sure that you're very specific and that you tailor your research to that so you're able to get that. Don't be fooled, be very careful with who you're talking to. And that's why exactly we brought Danny here, because Danny is someone that's perfect to talk to if you're looking to buy a house. But before we get to Danny, we're going to talk a bit about all over cost, healthcare, transportation, according to this study by this website called Whiteout. Would you be able to move to the next slide, please? Awesome. So according to this Wise.com, this study shows a bit of cost of living in the US, according to the US and also specifically to New York a bit. So here you can see a bit of salary averages in New York more specifically, and that's how you see that the amount of money people can make depending on the job that they're doing. And then on the right, you can see living expenses. So according to this single person per month might be like $1,000, but single person per year might be $13,000 in New York. University student could pay much less, but it also depends if you're in the dorm. It depends where your university is located. Is it downtown New York? Is it Manhattan? Is it Brooklyn? It always depends. And the next slide, where it shows a bit about, I think, healthcare services. So you can see what it would cost, like an average cost of a family doctor checkup, for example, $150. Cold medicine for a week might be $9. For a couple weeks might be $20. Antibiotics. You can also see a bit of prices of schools. If you have children, you're coming here with children. Private schools are definitely more expensive. Preschools carry the cost of almost $2,000 and monthly. And then university tuition is a whole nother ballgame. So always keep in consideration these costs when coming into the US. If you're here to achieve something, make sure that is part of your plan and you know how to get to where you want to be depending on the cost and what the mission is of coming to the US, right? Here you can see a bit more about transportation, vehicle, gasoline, monthly bus and transport pass. As we talked last episode about transportation, Victor and we talked about the cost of transportation here in Boston, and it definitely measures up to this table, even more actually, because having a car here in Boston in the city is very costly as opposed to riding the T, which is recommended. And the next slide will show us that we are going to start talking about what it costs to live in the US depending on housing or renting or buying a house. So let's bring in Danny and ask her a bit more questions about rentals and houses and buying in Boston, how it works for Boston since we're here.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
All right. So Danny, first of all, thank you for being here and lending us your expertise. It's definitely a pleasure. We would love to know a bit more about what it costs to rent a one-bedroom apartment in Boston. Do you know a bit about cost renting versus buying a one-bedroom apartment in Boston, and does it change when you move different neighborhoods in Boston? How does that work?
Hi, Dana. Yes, let me share a few thoughts with you. So it's kind of like this question is a three-fold question. So let's start answering the first question, right? What is the cost of one bedroom rental? And just to illustrate here, I picked three neighborhoods so we can get an idea. So this morning, I went into the MLS system, which is the multiple listing system that all realtors in Massachusetts, Florida, and other regions of the United States use to take a look at their inventory. Of course, we don't have all the inventory in one single place today. We live in the era of technology and a lot of platforms. So there are Trulia, there are Zillows. So there are many other platforms that also have listings for rentals and for sale. But to illustrate, so this morning I went into MLS and I look how many units are available in this system, in this inventory, for one bedroom in Allston. We have 62 rentals listed today. And the average of the one bedroom in Allston Brighton neighborhood, it's $1946, so $1,946 for one bedroom. In Back Bay, one bedroom, right now we have about 407 units available for rental in Back Bay. And the average of a one bedroom rental is $2,600 a month. And in comparison, I also picked Seaport, which is a new neighborhood. It's been developed in the past 10 years. It's been completely transformed. A lot of leasing buildings there and a lot of big companies as well as Vertex. So it makes the area very desirable, and it's the waterfront of Boston. Right now there we have 38 listings, one bedroom listings. And the average cost, the monthly cost for one bedroom there, it's $3,600. So as you can see, Dana, you can see very clearly that the cost of one bedroom varies by neighborhood greatly, right? So you can go all the way from $1,900 to almost $3,500 to $3,600. So it depends what you're looking for. And the second part of your question is, how does it compare with buying a house in Boston, right? So as a realtor, I've been a realtor for over 15 years. And what I notice is a lot of the international people, when they come here, and I work with a lot of international students that come here to do their master's or their undergrad, or they're here doing like a PhD and they're going to be here for a year, or sometimes they're just working here for a period of 4 years. But what I notice is they do not come prepared. So rentals here, real estate and rentals vary greatly by region, right? So New York is a different beast. San Francisco is another area, very distinct, and Boston too. But what I notice is most of them don't come prepared. They really don't know what they need in order to rent a unit in Boston. So first of all, you need, if you are renting a one bedroom in Boston today, you need to come up with 4 times the rental. What does it mean? You have to have the first month up front. You have to have the last month up front. You have to pay a deposit, and most likely you're going to pay the broker fee. In some instances, the landlord pays the broker fee or pays half of it, but mostly in Boston, the tenant is going to be responsible for paying the broker fee. So if you get a rental, let's hypothetically think $2,000 rental, right then and there, for you to get into a one bedroom apartment, you have to have $8,000, which is a lot of money out of pocket, especially if you are an international student, right? Where you probably have a different currency, right? And your home country money does not equate to the dollars. You might, in Brazil, for instance, right now, $1 is equals to 5 reais. So multiply 8,000 by 5. Wow, that's a mini fortune for you to rent a place here. And with that said, when you compare this to buying a house, and I think my perception is a lot of people don't buy a house because they don't have the minimum money down. And that is the most challenging thing for people thinking about buying a house. But I have an example here, and I would like to go over the numbers just so you can have an idea. So the average cost to buy a one bedroom condo in Boston is about, 525 to 650, right? Let's get an example of a $525,000 one bedroom apartment. If you are a first time home buyer and you qualify to buy with 3.5% down, so the money that you need to buy a $525,000 one bedroom, it's 18,375. Okay, that's the money that you need to have. Think about the rental. For you to get into a rental, you need 8,000. So if you can save up another 10,000, you have enough money to put down on a condo, on a one bedroom condo. Then you're going to ask me, well, how much is going to be the mortgage, right? So the mortgage for this particular example, the $525,000, it will be in principal and interest $2,135. Compared to the rentals, which is an average of $2,400 a month, which one you would rather do, rent or own a property? If you could come up with the money down, right? I think if you ask me, no brainer. I always go for buying the real estate, because you're not only paying towards an asset, but that asset is also gaining equity. So it's a win-win situation.
So, Danny, for people that don't really understand what equity means, what would equity mean when we're talking about the housing market?
It's how much a house can appreciate, right? Let's say that I bought this example here, the $525,000 one bedroom in Boston, right? Condo. So let's say that I hold this asset for 5 years, right? And 5 years, if you think that the real estate can be appreciate in a rate between 3 to 5% a year, how much equity you're going to have in your property in 5 years, right? So you might have there $50,000. I'm just throwing a number here. Condos do not appreciate as much as single families and multifamilies. But what we've seen in this past 5 to 10 years is they've been appreciating quite a lot. So you could very much buy a condo for 525, and down the road in 5 years from now, you may take it home as an equity, $150,000.
Wow, that's crazy. That is crazy, Danny. Thank you so much for that information. I do have a couple more questions. One of them is, so now that you're telling us that owning a house is a better investment to make as opposed to renting a house if you're planning to be here long term. What do you think in Boston is a good structure to buy? Because I know that here there's a lot of townhouses. The housing formation and structure is very different. How does it work here in Boston? What would you recommend for people that are looking to buy a house?
I always ask my buyers, right? What are you looking for? What are your goals with your real estate, right? Because people have different needs. Sometimes you are an international student and your parents have the money and the means to purchase a one bedroom or two bedrooms for you. And you're going to be here for a short term, like 4 years, just college. So it's definitely a better investment to buy the condo, get some cash in to help you with your living costs, and that is your need, right? But sometimes you could be a couple that now you're gonna have a kid, and you might need something bigger than a condo. So you might be looking for a house with a backyard. Then it's a different need. Oh, sometimes I've been having a lot of buyers lately, a little bit older. They're between 50 and up. They're thinking about their retirement. So what they want to do is to buy a multifamily, either a two family or a three family. Why? Because they want to live in one, so they want to occupy one unit, and they want to rent the other two units so they can help offset the mortgage. And at the same time, they're offsetting the mortgage, so they're paying towards the asset. They're also building equity on that property, right? So by the time they're 70, when it's time for them to retire, they can sell that asset, get the equity, pay off the loan, and now they can downsize comfortably, go to Florida, go stay in Boston, but buy something smaller and more manageable.
That is incredible. I mean, I've always loved understanding more about real estate, and I think this is great information to know, especially for us that we're pretty young and we are looking
Yeah.
in the future to make investments with the money that we make in the US. What do you think, Victor? Would that be something you would invest in, real estate?
Yeah, like I mean, as Danny was talking here, I was actually paying attention to a few pinpoints that really caught my attention. First of all, how when you asked me, Donna, what was like one of my first impressions when renting an apartment for myself is the whole thing of having these 4 months in advance and investing around 8K or even more. And that's interesting because sometimes that requires you to have one more person because not everybody can raise those funds. Even more if you're an international student, it really depends on what situation you're in. Like if you get a scholarship, for example, you might be more limited, right? But that's really interesting. And also how Danny mentioned, what's the objective of each person when they're when they're making an investment on real estate, right? So for me right now, I do think that I'm in a stage of my life where I am currently renting a place, right? And I do want to stay in Boston for as much as I can. I do think the city has a lot to offer for me as a professional. So I would see myself living here in the long term. And based on this advice, I would definitely think about buying a house rather than just renting, right? Because it really seems like when you're renting a place, you're basically just giving your money away to stay with this apartment. You're not necessarily making that money last. When you buy a place and you're basically investing a monthly capital, let's say like if you're renting for 2,000 a month and if you buy a house you're going to pay a little difference. I would much rather buy a house and pay that little difference because I know that in the future that little difference is going to be worth so much more, right? So definitely very, very insightful, and that makes me think about getting my own house. So it definitely works.
I just want to add a parenthesis here to what you said. So let's talk about the example I gave of buying a condo in Boston for $525,000, right? In which the principal and interest is going to be $2,100 a month. If you get a roommate and that roommate is paying you $1,000, you're already offsetting $1,000 of your mortgage. So you'll be living for 1,135. Of course, don't forget, if we are talking about a condo, we have condo fees, right? So you have to add that up, and we have taxes. But nevertheless, you are offsetting about $1,000 to $1,500 of your mortgage. So you could be living for $12,000 a year. Isn't it fantastic?
I find that extremely like beyond fantastic because it's like when I mean I have a question based on what you said, but it's amazing how like you can basically go from being a roommate to becoming a landlord and really holding that advantage of like seeing that investment as not just being something temporary but something long lasting. But that brings me to another question. So I am 25 years old, I have a full-time job, and I have an educational background. What do I need to start investing? Is there any specific age that I should keep in mind if I wanted to have my own place? Like, how old am I supposed to be? Does age matter, or is it like income?
No, age does not matter. You can start as early as possible. I would advise on that. But I think you need to prepare to be prepared for a few things, right? So buying a house, it's straightforward, but you need to do some homework on your end. First of all, you need to have the money down, right? So if you are buying a house for the first time, you might be eligible for a loan program that is called First Time Home Buyers, in which you can buy a house with as little as 3.5% down and the lowest interest rate of the market. Of course, that is going to depend on your DTI, debt to income ratio, and your credit history. But yes, you are eligible to get one of the lowest rates in the market, right, with this program. The second thing that you need to be prepared is there is costs associated with purchasing a property. Same thing with a car, right? So you have to pay excise taxes, you have to pay the plates. So houses have this cost too. And we call them in a generic form closing costs. What are closing costs? Well, closing costs are costs associated with the loan, costs associated with taxes, and other fees related to attorney, appraisal, home insurance, title insurance, PMI, and so on and so forth, right? But you also need to have an income, and you need to be employed for at least 2 years. So you have to show a history of solid employment, right? You have to do your tax returns as well. And you need to, based on that, right? So whenever you're trying to apply for a loan, what are the lenders looking for? The banks, the people that are going to lend you the money to buy that asset. They're looking for your debt to income ratio. It's one of the things. And they would like to see, the ideal buyer would be that person that have a good credit history, good credit scores, is employed for over a year, have paid their taxes, and the cost of living is below 40% the annual salary, right? So let's give an example. If you are making $55,000 annual salary, right, you're going to be taking home about $3,173 in change in money that goes to you. If you are paying $2,100 for a mortgage, you might not qualify for this much, right? So you would have to look for a property that's going to cost probably $350,000 instead of $525,000. But it's very manageable, right? So you need to basically, let's review it here: money down, closing costs, and you need to qualify. So you have to be employed. Your debt to income ratio has to be between 40 and 50%, ideally below that, and pay your taxes, and that's pretty much it.
Oh, okay. Makes complete sense. So there are a few requirements if you really want to make that investment. However, it's definitely not impossible. Even more if you've been like living here or working here. Let's say if you're an international student and one day you like to live here, it's about really setting that as a goal and making whatever is possible to achieve that, which means really making sure that you get all the experience and all the educational background that you need to actually get those 2 years of experience working. So then you can actually start qualifying to making that life investment that is a house, at least in my point of view. Right, Donna?
Exactly, Victor. I think that's super interesting, honestly. I honestly, I keep coming up with more questions that I want to ask Danny. I know we're running out of time a bit, but I did want to know, I mean, this is the last question, okay? I promise, Danny, I promise. But I did want to know, like, okay, let's say we're 25 years old and we're making X amount of money, and as you were giving an example, 55K or something like that. What would you do if you were living in Boston and you were that age? What would be like your go-to investment? Would you go to like invest in like maybe something in the city, or would you like to invest in a city, in a place like farther away from the city that seems to be growing in numbers? Like, would it be an apartment or a house? Like, what would be the things you would be looking for, like the indicators?
Donna, this is a very good question, and I get that a lot, right? But again, it's going to depend of your goals, right? Do you want to become a real estate investor? Do you want to occupy the property and get a roommate and help you offset your mortgage while you are paying for your mortgage, right? So what we've been seeing lately, especially with the pandemic, is that people realized that they had to stay home with their families, the dog, the kids. And, a lot of people that are living in the city, in the Boston area, they realize they need more space, right? So now we're seeing an outflux of people going from the city to the burbs because they need more space. They need space for the kids to be studying on Zoom. They need space for the wife to have her office. They need a space for the husband to have his own office as well, and privacy, so they can be working from home, studying from home. So that is a need, right, that we've been seeing a lot. And that is why there is this boom this is part of also, it's not the only driver behind, but one of the drivers behind of people moving from the cities to the burbs and getting housed is because they need more space. They need more space for the family and to be working from home. So in your case, I don't know. There's no right or wrong answer. I think you have to think, do you want to become a real estate investor? So, of course, you're going to be looking for an area where you can collect the highest rental, right, for your buck, right? So, and honestly, you want to have positive cash flow. So, if you're thinking that you're going to be a real estate investor, you have to think, okay, I'm buying a condo. It's $2,100 a month in mortgage and principal and interest. I have the condo fees, which is going to be another $500. So you're talking about $2,600 there plus taxes. So another $400. I'm just rounding up the numbers here to have some to give an idea. So you're talking about $3,000 a month, right? So if you are buying to invest, then you need to find a place where the rental is going to be higher than that. So you can at least break it even, or you're not taking money out of pocket, right? So I think that's going to depend to answer your question, it's going to depend on your goals.
Yes, you're totally right, Danny. It's definitely going to depend on my goals. I think personally, I would love to be a investor, of course, as you were saying. But I think of course, it depends on goal to goal. Hopefully, with it, I think we should make a whole different episode just about how the pandemic affected the housing market, because that is so interesting. But thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure to have you here. Honestly, hopefully more people will keep moving out of the city so they put our rent down. That would be great. But thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Danny, for being our guest. It was great to have you here and hear your input. Your expertise is very much appreciated. And that's it for today, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Approaching Your Future with your hosts, Dana Khan and Victor Ribeiro, where we discuss different cultural aspects of life in the United States. At 2 p.m. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on I'm sorry, guys. My tongue got twisted. Until next Friday at 2 p.m. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Instagram at approach_USA to keep up with the latest updates. And Victor, you want to say goodbye to the good people of Approach?
Yes, of course. And just reminding you all, as we're doing this is a live podcast. So excuse our French, do not say excuse our English. But yes, that's very, well, I would like to also thank Danny for showing up and for giving us all these insights and this amazing information. I really hope this can be really resourceful for whoever is planning to come to United States. So if you're already here and you would like to find out more, more information like this, make sure to rewatch this presentation, because there's a lot of information here that can be really insightful and really, a point of decision for you whenever you're deciding to buy your house or rent. Denny, again, thank you so much. And for everyone who's tuned in right now, make sure to always take full advantage of our free resources, reminding you that Approach has free English conversation classes. We also have live streams in our social media and blog posts, in addition to this podcast that we'll be holding every Friday. So make sure to always stay tuned in, because we have a lot of interesting topics to bring and a lot more information that I would like to share with you guys, so you all can better navigate your experience studying abroad. Sounds good? Well, I'll give Danny a chance to say a final goodbye, but this is it for now. Danny, would you like to say anything before we wrap up?
Yes, of course, Victor. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Yes, I think we could do another podcast, because there's so much more information that we could share that will be helpful for the international student that are coming here to learn a little bit more about the rental market and, what they need in order to get into a rental, right, as a student. But thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the initiative. This is great work you guys are doing, being here and informing the students at Approach and the people that follow us on the day-to-day living in Boston.
Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you. And yes, Dana, let's wrap up from here. And I think we should be all good to go. Once again, guys, every Friday we'll be here, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Until next time.